the first written aspects, and it's part of the sutras. It's sort of Vedic, it's Hindu. They talk about clouds and light coming through the clouds and blah, 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 like this. If you look at the real old chakra charts, you will see that the indigo is actually the beginning of the absence of light, or black. It's the transition point. When you look at a rainbow in these other things that we all deal with, this has always been the big test. This has always been the big test. If an individual is actually broke through into that ultraviolet refractive ability to see auras, okay? I assure you, if you take a prism, if you take an actual prism, do you know what I'm talking about? Hold a prism, one of them little crystals, hold it up in the sunlight by your window and put it against your wall. Do you know what I mean? Reflect the light on your wall. Regardless of what anyone's saying, coming through the prism, you will see it purple indigo. Okay? So, we'll deal with a gentleman called Sir Isaac Newton. One of the first to do the physical experiments, you know, a scientist type fella. Back in the 16th century, 15th century. See?
Yeah.
Okay? The discussion about color, when we get into this. I don't know all the modern scientific terms, particularly when they deal with, you know, there's been a big argument if light was a wave or a particle. That's going on for the last 150 years. Is it a wave or a particle in physics? I don't know, it was about 40, 50 years ago. They experimented with it enough that they came to the conclusion. We have one other person on, but they can see and hear us, but she's working on chat. See, there are so many things to deal with. Light actually travels at different speeds. I know we got the Speed of Light movie, but it actually travels at different speeds depending on the color. What makes a prism work is red travels a little more slowly than violet. Okay? Now, another argument has always been, you know, which one is active or passive? Reflectively, what colors do you use to make white? Come on now.
You're breaking up.
Okay. Red, blue, and green make white. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you took a light with a red lens, a light with a green lens, and a light with a blue lens, and put them all together on a board, it would come out white. See? Now, is that the presence of all reflected light or the presence of all refracted light? Okay, see, this is where we run into the active passive aspect. Somebody's on. So, yeah, let me give you a practical example. If you take red, blue, and green, you're going to get white. You're going to get white. See if I can turn this on. Okay, there. Okay? So if you take red and green and blue and combine them together, you get white light. You can see a little bit of green in here. One of my bulbs is giving me a trouble, but you get white light. You can see the purple corona around it. You can see the little green down at the bottom because the lights are up here. The lights are up there, up above. But that's how color works. So you deal with the properties of reflection and refraction while you're dealing with these, and it makes it complex. We've used it for an awful long time as that definitive test. Is a person, many people get small auric parts. Terry gets it a lot, particularly when she's working on somebody. She'll see the discoloration in the health aura. And if they stop balancing, she'll stop picking out green in the emotional body. And if they got a lot of angst or something, she can pick up the red. And sometimes when she's doing her altar, she gets a lot of purple. But the definitive aspect for us, for centuries, has been whether or not an individual actually gets that representation of violet before indigo. Indigo is basically almost black. It's the transition point. There is a considerable scientific argument over whether or not it exists. Now, a lot of people also, scientifically, there are a lot of people that have problems everywhere from blue, violet, indigo. But it's not dealt with as color blindness like the red-green is. So when you deal with that, actually I would suggest to you to look it up on Wikipedia. Even in Newton's experiments when he draws his graph, he actually shows violet before indigo. And so there's a pretty extensive conflict that goes on here. I can assure you that aurically, indigo does not exist.
Oh, good.
Indigo does not exist. Indigo is like the void. Indigo is just above, I forget what it is, I think it's something like either 300 or 400 to 550 nano some goddamn things that we see. Indigo is that dividing point between the ultraviolet. It's that dividing point. As soon as you break into the ultraviolet, many animals, particularly in the insect world, see beyond that spectrum. Actually, there's some scientific argument that what they see, like the plumage on birds and the colors of insects, actually have a strong sexual reproductive context. That's how they can tell when the lady is ready. So it's that's moving outside that spectrum. There's considerable argument that even cats and dogs see well into that spectrum where they lose, the red-green. They lose the red-green. If they lose the red-green, they therefore lose the white. See, so this gets very complex. As soon as you start breaking into that, as soon as you start breaking into that, that's what makes it difficult for a lot of people. And then we got people that have been working on it for hundreds of years that have trouble getting it. It's a valid thing. Your question is very valid. Believe me, look at the old charts. Look at them 1,000-year-old drawings the Vedic drawings. The third eye thing is like black. The violet is here. If you put the black here, if you put the indigo here, you're never going to make it to the violet. It's one of the things that make it difficult, but it's one of the things they do specifically on purpose that you have to work through. Look up that Wikipedia article. Now, it's still going to tell you in a lot of ways that violet comes before indigo, but it's also going to describe the process in a much, much more scientific way. And if you look at their actual pictorial representation, you can see where the conflict is. See that black on both sides, that's the void. The indigo is on both sides of the spectrum. If you're going to deal with the infrared concept, it's still on the other side of the dark. Now, we can argue, when they did for hundreds of years, if infrared and ultraviolet actually existed. And yet now, they use infrared for burglar alarms. They even make the burglars actually use glasses so they can see the infrared beam so they can step over. See? Science, it exists. Every time in the summertime you go to the beach, they're warning you about ultraviolet and why you need this sun cream. The indigo is the closure around the entire spectrum. Now you can ask questions, Alex. I know I didn't answer it right.